Welcome to the webinar, Executive Function Skills, Unlocking the Mystery of the Smart but Scattered Student. This is part 2 of a 2-part course. The presenter is Celeste Alexander. The webinar will now begin.
We are going to do Executive Function Part 2 with our fabulous speaker, Celeste Alexander.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining again. Okay, just a minuscule recap. Where we stopped last time, we basically defined executive function. We talked about the resources where the information comes from, which, again, is mostly from the work of Peg Dawson and Richard Guare, few other folks. It's at the beginning. One of the beginning slides has the references on there. We defined them, what the 11 executive function skills were, determined that there were some that were more thinking cognition and the other ones were doing behavior types of functions. And then we talked about how the brain takes care of everything through pruning, and how we really need those frontal lobes, and how our children who have executive function difficulties, we really do need to loan our frontal lobes to them to help them obtain the skills that they need. We also, you'll see at the bottom, the reason I started with this slide is because we're going to talk more about what can we do tonight as OTs in the school setting. What can we do to help our children that have these difficulties? Well, one that we briefly mentioned a month ago was the glasses, and giving them a framework, a lens, an anchor, to a visual anchor, so that they understand what they have, an image that they can anchor from. So we give our child what we call future glasses. And this was a term that actually was coined by Kristen Jacobson, who is a speech therapist, and also Sarah Ward, who is another speech therapist that have presented at the ASHA conventions, which is the speech therapies organization that's equivalent to AOTA. So they have sort of coined that term of future glasses. So we start with the end product in mind, and we give our children visual images. So I want you to take that bottom phrase of the slide, the PowerPoint, and keep that in your mind as we're talking about these different activities and different things that we're going to try to help our children do, because I think we have to keep that at the forefront of our mind. So as we concluded last time, how can we help? We can definitely capitalize on some of our children's strengths. We want to really match the child to the task. And again, I think OTs are perfect at doing that. We know how to analyze and break down and grade activities like nobody's business. We do it all day long. And also, when we're addressing weaknesses, I think that we can take a very systematic approach about how to help. I think that those are some of our talents that we bring as OTs to the table that are different than a teacher or a speech therapist or some type of learning specialist. I really do think that that is something that we offer. So that, I know I mentioned that last time. So just one or two more slides from last time. So these are the principles that Peg, Dr. Dawson, and Dr. Guare really preach in terms of helping improve executive skills. So we're going to teach deficient skills rather than expecting a child to just acquire them through osmosis. They can't. If they could, they wouldn't have the issue. And they tend to use a scaffolding approach, which means we're going to support, just as if you think about scaffolding when someone's building something or putting artwork on in a very high ceiling in a place. And I have just personally also done some work with Dr. Jeff Jones here in Atlanta, who has worked with children with executive function difficulties for, probably 30 years. And that was one of the words that just automatically came out of his mouth was, using a scaffolding approach. So the second bullet, considering the child's developmental level, again, as OTs, I think that's just natural and innate. We do that all the time. They suggest moving from the external to the internal. And what they're the explanation that I can share with you for that is that we have to begin our training of executive skills with any child with something outside of the child. So, for instance, before you taught your child not to run in the road, you stayed with him and held his hand, and then the two of you reached a street corner to make sure that that didn't happen. So eventually you repeated the rule, look both ways before crossing. Your child eventually internalized the rule. Then you observed your child following the rules. Now your child can cross the street by himself. So in all kinds of ways, we organize and structure the environment to compensate for lack of executive function skills or skills that haven't developed yet. So what they're saying is when you decide to help, you should always begin by changing things outside of the child before moving on to things that require the child to change themselves. So again, we're modifying the environment. And I mean, we do that. It's a compensatory technique. We do that all the time. So again, here are some examples, other examples to help you. Cueing a child to brush her teeth before they go to bed, rather than expecting them to do it on their own. Keeping tasks very brief, rather than expecting a young child to work for a long time to complete a chore. Keeping events small, not to overstimulate a child. And again, do you want to tell your 14-year-old to brush their teeth? Probably not. Some of us, I'm sure, probably still do. But I think what we're saying is that if we provide that foundation when they're younger and that scaffolding, it does become internalized. It's not automatically internalized like other children, but over time it does become internalized. So then we remember that the external, like we said, includes its changes to the environment, the task, or interactions with the child. Okay, so that we know is OTs. Then it says, use rather than fight the child's innate drive for mastery and control. So as any of us know that have worked with preschoolers or have our own 2 or 3-year-old children, they work hard to control their own lives. Oh my goodness gracious. They do this by achieving mastery and by working to get what they want when they want it. The mastery is a delight for parents to watch, but the persistence can make you want to pull your hair out sometimes. So what they're saying is it's difficult because what they want is sometimes definitely in conflict with what you want as a parent or an OT or a teacher. But they're saying when you have that conflict and you still want them to have that drive to master that mastery and control, you want them to get it, to reach that goal, what you can do is you still support your child's goals, agenda, while remaining in charge, okay? So they say their advice is to create routines and schedules so that your child knows what will happen when and will accept them as a part of the everyday life. And I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, so to speak. We do this so innately with our children who are on the spectrum, but we're learning that our children who have executive function challenges need this as well. Actually, I think all children to some degree crave, routine and schedules. So again, they're saying this is really important for activities that occur on a daily basis. And here we go, ADLs, meal times, bedtime, chores, homework. So they know that there's a certain time of day that these things are going to happen. So when you let them know and you got it planned, there's less fighting, okay? So when we also do this very well, we build in choices, okay? We still control the choices, but we build them in. The other thing they say is practicing difficult tasks in small steps and increasing the demand only gradually. We do that. We do that, grading activities. So again, and we all know that our children are master negotiators. And I think that there's, they say to use negotiation basically to move yourself away from the automatic no, so that no is not the first word that comes out of your mouth, because that, that's going to instill, a wall right in front of you. So again, it's a progression and, maybe a first then, okay, or rather, you know? So I think that's what that phrase, what they're speaking of. Okay, continuing, we modify tasks to match our child's capacity. We've already talked about that. We use incentives to augment instruction. Okay, even if it's, you may have 5 more minutes of computer time, Celeste, if you finish the sentence that, that you're writing, or you complete the puzzle, whatever it might be. It doesn't have to be a food incentive. It doesn't have to be a toy incentive. It could be 5 more minutes of cuddle time, or 5 minutes in the rocking chair, or whatever. Be creative. Ask the child. Sometimes I ask the child, what might you think might be a good treat or reward? And we talk about it. So again, the next one, we talk about providing just enough support for the child to be successful. So again, this appears to be really simple and very self-evident, but it's trickier than it appears. And I know we know that. The 2 components that are difficult are just enough support and for the child to achieve success. But when we work with our children, sometimes we tend to support them too much, and we do too much for them. I am guilty as charged. My hand is high up in the air, but I'm trying to learn. And when we do that, they don't learn to perform the task independently. Okay. Now, if we don't provide enough, the child fails. And I think that's where the art and the talent of being a good OT comes in, is that over time, even with the same child, you figure out those strategies that really do work, and you know how much support or scaffolding you might need for that child. Okay. Again, I think too, we do this all the time. We might be walking with a child to our therapy room or back to the classroom, and a door's there, and we automatically open the door for them. Well, my goodness, will they ever learn to open the door? Nope. But we can let them pull and tug, and you've got a couple things. You've got heavy work going on, maybe even some, just natural environment strengthening going on, and they learn how to do it. They figure it out. And I think that they feel a higher sense of accomplishment when they're able to succeed and master those goals with that just enough support. Okay. And again, we're going to keep those supports and supervision in place until the child achieves that mastery and success. And then the last one that they talk about is we're going to fade supports gradually, never abruptly. Okay. So again, the example that they talk about is that a child riding a bicycle. Of course, yes, they have the training wheels, and then you do take those training wheels off, but you're holding the bike, and you hold the bike as long as you need to, but you're not holding the bike forever. And then again, you provide just enough support for the child to be successful. And the one thing that I need to read and read and read again, it says, don't keep cueing or prompting the child when he doesn't need you to do that. But it says don't leave them hanging either. So again, I feel like we do this so naturally. All right, so now down to the nitty-gritty of how we're going to do some of these things. Okay, let me flip my textbook to where I need to be. Okay, so we've talked about external modifications. Okay, so they use an ABC principle. Again, this is Dr. Dawson and Dr. Guari's information. Whoops, sorry about that. Whoops, going the wrong way. Okay. All right. So ABC, pretty simple to remember. A is your antecedent. What happens before? So we just talked about this. We're going to start with external modifications. It's very, very important. And it's also very good for the younger child. So if you're working with preschoolers, kindergartners, first graders, this is going to be important. So the things to remember are change the physical or social environment to reduce problems. Okay. If you know that being in a certain place in the school is going to set things off or cause a problem, don't take them there in terms of OT. And I know that that's difficult in the classroom, but somehow we have to figure out strategies to help modify the environment when needed. Okay, so again, they talk about changing the nature of the task, and then the way that you interact with the child is important too as well. And what they're saying is rehearse situations before they come up. Appropriate use of verbal prompts or reminders. Again, remember what we talked about? See if they can verbalize and tell you what they talk about. Arrange for other cues, such as visual cues, written reminders, lists, audio tape cues, alarms, pagers. That's for a little bit, older child. But they're saying you can change the way you interact, okay? And you can coach the child as much as needed. Not too much, not too little. Okay, so another way that we can teach skills are directly, okay? So B is behavior, okay? So there's there's two ways to look at this, naturally and informally. So when that happens, we're talking about this sort of verbal scaffolding, use of a game, and I'm going to flip to my examples in just a second. So again, all right, okay. So we all use games to encourage the development of lots of executive function skills. And I think that through play and games, those things happen so much more naturally, and it's not forced, and it's not this horrible thing. It's much more fun. And also, as an OT, what do? We teach in context of functional activities. So we're in the classroom, and again, y'all are going to hear my little speech of why I love being in schools. It's where it's happening. Yes, they can come and do it in other places, in your clinic, in their home is important too, but I think it's so much more meaningful when they do it in their natural context. So, okay, let me see. Let me just anchor myself here. Okay. Thanks for your patience. 1 second. Okay. So, all right, using games. I want to go a little more in depth in that. It says even classic games like checkers or Chinese checkers or chess require planning, sustained attention, response inhibition, working memory, and metacognition, amongst others. The simplest of board games like Candyland require attention, response inhibition, and goal-directed persistence for young children, while games like Monopoly and Clue additionally involve planning and working memory. Battleship requires attention, planning, and organization, inhibition, and metacognition. Holding family game nights is very important and encourages your child to play games with their siblings or their friends. And it says you can even build executive skills with time-honored games like tic-tac-toe, hangman, 20 questions. And it's saying for parents, when you're sitting in a doctor's office or you're taking a car trip or waiting for your order at a restaurant, these are great ways to naturally and informally teach our executive skills. Okay. Again, real world things like meal planning, cooking, grocery shopping. Hey, it's OT. It's what we do. I read this and I think, okay, we do this so naturally. And through our occupation-based activities. All right, so let's skip down to a more targeted approach. Sometimes the natural and informal way is not enough for some of our children. So we have to do direct intervention for teaching. So what you're going to do is you're going to identify the problem behavior that you want to work on. Okay, so for instance, rushes through homework, resulting in messy work and careless mistakes. Okay, and it's important to define the problem behavior because you clarify exactly what it is and exactly what you're going to teach. Teaching someone not to be messy sounds like a thankless, if not impossible task. But teaching a child to keep his personal belongings off the living room floor is much more of an achievable goal. So the next step is set a goal. And y'all, to me, again, it seems so natural, like how we document things. You identify the problem, you write a problem statement, and you have a baseline, and then you set your goals from there. And again, involve the child. If the child is older, definitely involve the child, because if they're more involved and invested, they're more apt to meet the goal. Okay, so you want the goal to be, and careful on this second bullet, you want the goal to be a positive restatement of the problem behavior. Okay, so the goal says what the child is expected to do in terms that describe behaviors that can be seen or heard, but we want to turn it around. So for instance, here's an example. Starts classwork without complaining, or starts homework without complaining. Completes chores on time without reminders. Takes personal belongings out of the locker before having to be asked. Takes personal belongings out of the living room before going to bed. Completes classwork neatly with a minimum of 3 mistakes. Okay, so it's very easy to set those behavioral goals. So then, obviously, once you've set the goals, you're going to outline the steps that you need to follow to reach the goal. It's pretty simple. You can turn these steps, and here's the part that if you're not an organized person, the book that Dr. Guare and Dr. Dawson have written has so many different checklists and things. Don't recreate the wheel. They're there for you to use, and they do give permission to reproduce them. So turn these steps into list or checklists that can be followed. And again, you supervise the child following the procedure, and then fade supervision when appropriate. Again, it's what we do as OTs. It seems so natural. I probably said that 100 times. I'm sorry for repeating myself so much. Okay, so then the C. I love this. I love to motivate kids. I think we're all motivated. I say this all the time. I love what I do, but I'm still motivated by my paycheck. If I don't go to work, I don't get a paycheck. So, but I do love what I do. Motivation. So, excuse me, let me back up. So we've got A for antecedent, B for the behavior, what we're going to change, and then we've got C for consequence. So we're going to use motivational strategies for that. So I think motivation is important in reinforcing the sequence of your steps. It's important also to encourage the child to use strategies within their current repertoire. Okay, and it doesn't have to be good job all the time. It could be, kiss your brain. You remembered to use that card that I put on your desk, or whatever. It could be a little visual that you have for checking their handwriting or something like that. Or give me a high five for remembering to put your book in your book bag, whatever it might be. If you state what the behavior is, the child is more apt to remember than just general praise, okay? And it does need to be effective. So it's same thing. Instead of saying good job, and I'm guilty of that too sometimes, but we have to try. And then I love this one, fun at the finish line. Positives rather than negatives. Kids love challenges. It's harder. It makes our work a little bit harder. And I don't mean physically run to a finish line, but you can challenge them with positives. Okay, I bet, I wonder if you can write 3 words before I can put this file away, or whatever it might be. You can have whatever the incentive is. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Again, praise, fun. That the positive drive helps the motivation, and I think helps the child succeed. Now, I know we get so frustrated and we get tired, and our children, they're challenging, they have tough behaviors. But if we can try to always take an approach of motivational, positive incentives rather than negative. Well, I'm going to take away your playtime, or rather than, would you like 10 more minutes of free cell, or would you like 10 more minutes of XYZ? I think that it just seems to turn them around. I don't know. I call it marketing. That's my other word. It's easy to remember. It should be C, but it should be M for marketing too. It's all in the marketing sometimes. I think all in how you present it. So again, I think if you stress the desired activity, that fun at the finish line, man, if you get to the finish line, you're going to get that free cell. Come on, you can do it. We all love that. So now for our tougher children, we might need more of formal incentive systems, okay? And again, if you've had children with ADHD, maybe more OCD, ODD, I'm oppositional defiance, sorry, I didn't mean OCD, ODD, it's going to be a little more of a formal incentive system, okay? And some of those children have behavior intervention plans. That's how formal that can be, which is sometimes called a BIP or a behavior intervention plan in the IEP. So it can be, very, very laid out. It can be very specific, okay? So again, it could be a chart, a sheet, a behavior contract. Those are all, and they've got examples of these in the book for you to use. So you don't have to recreate the wheel, okay? And again, motivational strategies are great to reinforce. Okay, so the game plan, it's easy as ABC. You can modify the environment, use scaffolding, games, teach skills directly, and the number one is more informally or naturally. And then 3, providing motivation and incentives. Okay, and this is just a recap slide. All right, so let's talk about more interventions around the young child. So again, general guidelines for developing things for young children, as we know. And these are good, instructional routines, and keeping them short, reducing the number of steps involved, using picture cues rather than written lists, be prepared to provide cues and supervision, work side by side if needed. And again, not over supporting, but not over supporting, but scaffolding. Okay, so again, it feels like things that we recommend to our teachers all the time. But I think now with executive function being such a buzzword, if we market ourselves that this is just something that's so natural in our discipline, what we do, we can build some accountability for our services. Okay. So now if we talk about the older child, we are talking about general guidelines, making the child a full partner. And I really do believe in this if you can. We talk about why don't we? I talk with new therapists sometimes and I'll say, well, just ask the child, especially if it's a therapist that's transitioning in the middle of the year and someone's left and it's January. Okay, Claire Stone, like November of whatever year that was. And, you're reading somebody else's notes and goals and you're like, well, you just ask, well, what did you do with Miss Celeste before Miss Celeste went off to her dream island with Bradley Cooper and left you stranded here at Redan Elementary School? So ask the child. I do and if I feel like the child's going to be a reliable, historian and a reliable reporter, why not? We do it with adults. We take occupational histories, profiles. We ask them their likes and dislikes all the time. Why not ask a child if they're old enough and reliable enough to answer? Be willing to negotiate rather than dictate. Now, I'm not talking about negotiating all day long, but again, using that rather or a first and then versus you need to sit down and do this right now. Now, I know there are times that we get to that point, but again, if we can sort of build a foundation where we don't have to get to that point, I think that's the best case scenario, obviously. When possible, use visual cues rather than verbal cues. It really does sound like less nagging to an older child. And I think it makes, it can make them feel more, what's the word I'm looking for? Not accountable, invested in if they have something that sometimes I even have them create what they think would be the right visual cue. Okay. So those are some ideas around for the older child. Let me give you some ideas that are actually not in the PowerPoint, but I'll send them. And again, we know these things. For the classroom specifically, repeating directions and assignments and schedules. These are things we have to help our teachers understand, okay? Making the written directions very simple and concrete. Highlighting key words on ideas and worksheets. giving the student even colored strips to place under sentences when reading. Okay, we know these things, but it's good to have them on paper. For organization, you can have a to-do list on the child's desk that they can check off. You create an assignment book for the teacher or parents to check as well. And a lot of children have agendas already, so that's already there for you. We know this, providing an extra set of textbooks for the home so that they're not textbooks going back and forth. Organizing the folders in either a basket or, some way that those folders can be organized so the child knows where to put things and which folder it goes into. Breaking down big projects into smaller pieces with shorter deadlines. So I think what happens is when you get a child with executive function, especially an older child, and they're like, oh my God, I got this 75-page paper, they're in, 8th or 9th grade, and they've got this 75-page paper and they fall apart because they don't know how to chunk it into smaller pieces and create shorter deadlines for themselves to reach the finish line on time. So it's really there are organizational strategies. Those are just some other helpful hints. Here's some verbal things that are good, I think you could share with teachers too. If you say to the student, and you make sure that they're looking at you, this is important to know because, and if you give them a reason, I think that validates and might even give them an anchor or a cue to look at. Again, they talk about routine. They also talk about a short review before teaching new skills, and that you always check in frequently to make sure that the child understands the work that they're doing. Okay, so those are just, and this is actually from a website called understood.org. There's a lot of information on this website. Again, it's understood, just the word, understood.org. It's great. They've got things on executive function, all other different kinds of topics, but it's a lot of good school-based information. So that's where this last information came from that I was sharing with you. Okay, so now we're going to talk about interventions for like each little category, like how to build response inhibition. Okay, and we're going to go through each little category or function, I should say. So always assume that the youngest child has very little impulse control. If you assume that, then you're not going to be in for a hard time. You're going to think that things are wonderful. Always assume that they have very little, and you can build from there. Teaching children delayed gratification helps build impulse control. Even if it is, okay, I need you to put 3 puzzle pieces in the puzzle before we go ride the scooter board. Okay, or before we go jump on the trampoline, or I need you to put 4 pieces of whatever it might, 4 leaves in the Ziploc before we go over to play with the Play-Doh, because the leaves in the Ziploc you're going to crunch up and have a sensory activity or something later on. Okay, so you can teach delayed gratification in any way for these little ones, and that can help build their impulse control. Okay, remember, this is frontal lobe stuff, y'all. They can't dampen these responses if we think about it from a neurology perspective. Okay, they just can't do it yet. So we're lending them our frontal lobes, remember. Okay, so that if that helps. You're going to review situations in advance to prepare the young child. Okay, when we go to the music room, this is what we're going to do. Okay, or when we go into the OT room, this is what we're going to do. The first thing we're going to do, the second thing we're going to do. Okay, and you may have given the child a choice of what they want to do first when they come to the OT room. But you're going to review that with them again. Now, what were we going to do first? Okay, that's an example. So again, role playing is very important and practicing response inhibition. And then again, cueing the child for the specific behavior, and then reward them if self-control is exhibited. Now use the reward, loosely, whatever it might be. High five, a big hug, an extra ride on the scooter board, an extra, spin on the sit and spin, whatever it might be, or, whatever that incentive is that motivates that child is what you're going to use. Okay, so those are really good ways to help build response inhibition. Okay, so here we go, enhancing working memory. Make eye contact when verbalizing something that needs to be remembered. Well, I say, we try to do that a lot, but especially like we just said, when the teaching perspective, you need this is important because, or learning this skill is important because. That's exactly where this comes from. So you're going to try to keep external distractions to a minimum. Now I hear you all laughing all the way over here in Sandy Springs at Club Westfield where I live, okay? I know it's hard, but what do we have to do? We have to help our children build filters sometimes. Sometimes it is with that external environment. We do headphones. We do a little carol, like a study carol. We do, like the thing, even sometimes some of the children will put some things in where, like, in their ears for swimming, those moldable little earplugs. We do anything we can to help keep distractions to a minimum. Have the child repeat back what you said. And again, this is for a lot of things, but especially working memory, okay? Use reminders, such as picture schedules, lists, and other schedules. Written schedules, I think. Rehearse your expectations. Again, I feel like a lot of it is repetitive, but you have to also remember what skill you're building and you're working on. So we're looking at working memory again. So rehearsing before, if possible, okay? But we also have to practice flexibility too. Help the child think of ways to remember something that will work for them. And again, I'm sharing a personal experience. My little boy is learning some amazing things. They are using actually what they call icons, and they're physical little things. One is, it's a magnet, and it's a U-shaped magnet with another little magnet that is attracted to it, and it's called a friend magnet. And you learn things of how to be a friend, what you do to be a good friend with a friend magnet. So that was the first icon that he got. The second icon that he got was a yellow highlighter, because you're just going to highlight what you need to say to someone. If someone says, well, how was your day? You don't need to spend 3 hours telling them about your day. You highlight the important things of what happened. And then they also gave them, he's also had a little rubber duck, which is for letting things roll off your back, being flexible. And ducks have this, water just glides right off their back. And then also, too, they have a motto that, let's see if I can remember the letters. Let's see, it's let it go and move on. LIGMO, let it go and move on. LIGMO. So LIGMO, let it go and move on. So again, visual things, visual anchors will help these children build the skill. And then again, we've talked about incentives. So I'm comfortable sharing personal experiences because I see it helping and I see it working. So let them see the end result, give them visual anchors. Okay, here we go. Emotional control. For younger children, sometimes it really does mean regulating the environment. They don't go in a music room with 50 kids. They have to have some kind of, adapted environment. Don't have 30 kids at a birthday party, have 10. If it's a room where there's a metal ceiling and it's very noisy, somehow you got to do something, you got to help the child in terms of regulating, dampening sound with headphones. We've already, whatever strategies we've talked about. Again, preparing the child about what to expect and here's the important part, what they can do when they feel overwhelmed. Again, they don't have these innate strategies to know, okay, well, I can just, I can step away, or I can breathe, or I can whatever, go get a drink of water. We have to provide that scaffolding. We have to help teach them. And again, the third bullet is just repetitive, teaching them coping strategies. We know that our kids don't have coping strategies. We know that some adults around us don't have coping strategies, but we know that our kids with executive difficulties, they need help with that. Sometimes it needs to be a script. It might be something written to follow for specific problem situations. When X occurs, then Y is going to happen. Sometimes it's got to be that concrete, especially with emotional control. Because again, think about where this comes from. Not so much frontal lobe, but that limbic system. Usually the vestibular system is not working in harmony with other things. So the emotional control can be, rather fragile, okay? Read stories in which characters exhibit the desired behavior. Do you guys know about Flex and, oh gosh, it went out of my head. Maybe you guys probably do. I know anybody who's worked in Fulton County has probably heard Janine Wiskin talk about Flex. Social stories. Flex is a superhero character, and he's got people that do the right thing and people that don't do so much of the right thing, but he's a superhero, and it's great for like the younger elementary age school boys and girls, I guess, too, but mostly boys. Again, visual, concrete examples. And if all of the above don't work, maybe working with a counselor may be beneficial. It could be we don't know what kind of pre-existing things are going on, or also underlying things happening within the home. There's just a lot of variables. But if none of our strategies are working, then probably a referral or talking to a school counselor might be helpful. Okay, sustained attention. Oh, I hope I can help y'all. I know you're doing great. 8:16, I'm watching the time. Drink some water, jump up and down, do what you need to do. We got 14 more minutes. We're good to go. 13 more minutes. Okay, providing supervision, making increased attention a gradual process. And I think, again, we can't expect our children to just all of a sudden be able to attend for, 2 hours or an hour or even 30 minutes. It's got to be a gradual process. And again, I think we do that so naturally in our OT work. But we have to share that with others other disciplines who maybe don't understand that. Okay. A visual depiction of elapsed time. Okay, we all know this. The red visual timer, ding, that the red part goes away. Self-monitoring audio tape. And I'm going to, I think that's pretty self-explanatory. You can record and self-monitor, listen, how long were you able to pay attention? Let's play it back and find out. Okay, I think that's kind of cool. Make the task interesting. Nobody, they say this too, and it's not all 100% true, but sometimes we get bored with our treatment, but the kids are excited, but a lot of times if we're bored, the kids are bored. Okay, so try to keep the task interesting if you can. Again, broken record, incentive systems, fun at the finish line strategy, and offer praise for staying on task. Oh my gosh, you practiced those numbers for 15 minutes. Oh my goodness. You have to overdo it. You have to win your Academy Award when you're working with these wonderful, wonderful children. Okay, task initiation. Okay, you have to reinforce it throughout the day. Again, what are we going to do? How does it happen? Scheduling, what needs to happen? You've got to provide that prompting, and you've got to help them with that task initiation throughout lots of activities throughout the day. Providing a visual cue to remind your child. Oops, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry, my hand hit the mouse. Okay. Visual cue to remind your child to begin the task. Sometimes it's even as simple as or starting a task, ending a task. Teachers turn out the lights, or some teachers hold up their hands, and everybody knows what to do. You might hold up a cue, a shape, a red circle, a green triangle means a certain thing. You create your system of what you need for task initiation. And sometimes you don't even need the verbal to go with it. You just use the visual. Again, breaking overwhelming tasks into smaller, more manageable pieces. And I think this is key. Again, we talked about sometimes seeing the whole big picture is just overwhelming. And again, think about the first slide where we started. Put the end in sight. Okay, here's the end product. But you don't have to go through every step that's going to take them there, but we're going to break it down. But eventually, here's what it's going to be, and it's going to be awesome. So you give them the future glasses, but you don't overwhelm them throughout the process of getting there. And you make a plan, make it manageable, and you decide when and how the task will get done. You allow the child to choose a preferred cue to begin a task. Again, if they're invested and it's meaningful, I think it makes all the difference in the world. And is it going to take more work on your part? Absolutely. Are you going to be a more tired therapist? Absolutely. But are you going to see gains and differences in your children? Absolutely. I can say it with 100% conviction. You can. So as we approach the end of the school year and everybody's really tired, but we can, I promise. Okay, and then the last one, think about metacognitive. We're at the top of the triangle. Mr. Maslow is very happy with us, okay? So we're going to work on cultivating those metacognitive skills, and let me get myself my visual anchor that I need to share accurate information with you. Okay, so we're going to provide specific praise for key elements of task performance. I love the way that you hung your jacket on the hook, and I didn't have to ask you, or whatever, or you hung the jacket on the hook. I love the way that you zipped your book bag, okay? Kids walking around with a half unzipped book bag, everything's falling out. I mean, pick the specific element. I'm just giving you examples just off the top of my head, which may not be the best examples, but I think you understand. I hope you understand. Teach self-evaluation skills. And this is something that I learned actually very late in my OT practice, like just a few years ago, is having the children really look at, okay, and again, all right, so here we go with handwriting, of course, because what else, we do lots of other things, but, the seventh grader who didn't finish his written report or, the teacher sends it down to OT. All right, so instead of you circling or highlighting what is wrong or what letter's not on the line or which one is formed or, or whatever it might be, let them look. All right, you figure out what looks wrong to you, because if they can't figure it out, that's a problem. And so we have to teach them those self-evaluation skills for anything, not just academic work, sports, anything. I think that is, we all do it. What did I do wrong with that child? What didn't work? We all self-evaluate. And I think that that's important. And you can even do it with little kids. Gee, why would that puzzle piece not fit there? Oh gosh, it was turned the wrong way. You can do it at very basic levels, okay, with basic language if you need to. Again, we've talked about this before. Have them identify what the finished looks like. Remember to give them the glasses, give them an anchor. They don't have the visual anchor, okay? And I'm dating myself way back. I remember going to a Mary Bimbo Loops and Groups workshop, good Lord, probably 1994 sometime. I was CODA, and somewhere here in Atlanta. And she talked about, she was talking obviously more about the learning disabled child, but those children have executive function issues, as we know. And she said they need visual anchors when she talked about how she developed the clock for the clock climbers. So it's taken a long time to come back around. So, but it's been in the OT world, just called very different things. So, all right, fourth bullet. Teach a set of questions the child can ask themselves when problem situations arise. Okay, so whatever it might be, a social situation, an academic situation, what can they always ask themselves? You pick out the set of questions, and let me see if they have got examples for you here. Let's see if I can give a specific example. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay. Teach a set of questions. Okay. What are we going to do? 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 Okay. What are we Here it is. They might include, what is the problem that I need to solve or fix or change? What is my plan? And am I following my plan? And then, of course, how did I do? So I'll say them again so we can teach them. And again, we can adjust the language for younger or older children. We can change the language, but here's the general idea. Okay, what is the problem I need to solve? What is my plan? Am I following my plan? And how did I do? All right, so that's what they suggest. Next bullet, playing guessing games for teaching and understanding of facial gestures and tone of voice. Again, many young children who have problems with these skills really don't know how to read or fully interpret. I think sometimes they understand that someone might be sad or angry or happy, but I don't know that they truly understand what that means. What does sad mean? What does hurt? My feelings are hurt. They don't really understand that. And then again, helping children to recognize how tone of voice changes the meaning of what's being said. There is a statistic that says that 55% of communication is facial expression and 38% is tone of voice, and 7% only 7% is the actual words that are spoken. That's pretty telling, very telling. So again, I think that we can help our children with this, and we know about tone of voice. And you can play with it. I use a radio dial, or I use silly voices, or I use the opera singer, or I use I don't know, all kinds of, an animal voice, and we change loud and soft and angry and happy and silly and all kinds of stuff. So those are fun games to play. And then lastly, ask the child to identify how their actions might make someone else feel. Well, if someone said that to you, how would you feel inside? And they might automatically answer, I'd feel sad, or I'd feel hurt. But do they really understand what that means? And you have to dig and explore a little bit, okay? And again, we have to help our teachers understand some of this as well in a very respectful, professional way. I never mean that we would be demeaning in any way, but just information sharing. We're their partners. You have to be their partners. And if you can help them understand these things, I think they will see, quote unquote, behavior in quite a different way. Okay, discussion of IEP goals. You can set them. In general, what I want to say is that obviously a goal is a behavior that we want to see change. Our IEP goals are really going to be based around what does the child need to do. I mean, it's going to be academic, it's going to be adaptive, it's going to be whatever it needs to be. It's not really going to change the way the goal is written. It just changes the support strategies and really the factors that we bring into our treatment. So we're not going to write a goal that says Celeste will increase her working memory skills. I mean, that's a poorly written goal anyway. How do you measure that? Okay, we're going to give an example, a concrete example for working memory. Celeste will repeat directions with 80% accuracy 3 out of 5 times, repeat verbal directions or whatever it might be. I mean, I'm just throwing a goal out there, and that's not really even that's more of again, you're picking out more of the skill versus really an occupational factor within the classroom. So it still has to be related. The goal has to be a true IEP, academic goal. So I think my point in just bringing up the slide and it even really being blank is that you don't really write them differently. It's really the approach to treatment that we take that is different. Okay. Oh my gosh, 1 minute. Okay, final thought. Woo! Start working as early as possible. Those 3-year-old, 4-year-olds, pre-Kers, okay, response inhibition, we can do it. We can do it. We can do it. We can always encourage the child's effort. We sure can. We can direct the child towards people or resources they can access for help when they're ready. Okay, Miss Broken Record here. Always praise their successes. Find something. Find something. There is something there, I promise you. You may have to dig. You have to peel that onion way back, but it's there. Always let them know that you love and care about them, no matter what the performance outcome was in your session. because we know that these children do not have strong self-esteem. And I know that we're not their counselors, but sometimes we are the person that really makes a change in their life, and we create that rapport through our therapeutic use of self. So no matter what, try to do that if you can. So that's the bulk of the content, and there's so much more, y'all. I could talk for 3 days on this topic, and it's fun, and I enjoy it, and you really can see nice gains. But these are additional books. I love the titles. Late, Lost, and Unprepared. That sounds like my life, half of the time. A Parent's Guide to Helping Children with Executive Function. The crumpled paper that was due last week, Helping Disorganized and Distracted Boys and Celeste Alexander Succeed in Life. Helping students take control of everyday executive functions. So you'll have these in the PowerPoint. I think they're great additional resources that you can have. And then just remember those glasses. Give them your frontal lobes and those glasses. And I know that you'll see a difference. I know that you will.